University of Exeter's Institute of Arab and Islamic Studies, this is Mapping Connections. I'm Safa Joudeh. In today's episode, we're exploring a subtle and yet overlooked dimension of China's engagement in the Middle East, people-to-people connections. When we talk about China's growing role in the Middle East, the focus is usually on economic and political relations, things like energy trade, infrastructure projects, and state-to-state deals. These are areas of significance given China's status as the Middle East's top trading partner and one of its fastest-growing investors. But influence doesn't just happen through official channels. It also develops in quieter ways, through people-to-people relations. This includes business networks, student exchanges, language learning, tourism, and even digital platforms. These informal ties don't always make the headlines, but they play a big role in shaping how China is seen by governments and by societies across the region. They work as a form of soft power that can reinforce political and economic relations and, in the long run, geopolitical influence. So today we want to ask, how much influence do these connections really create? How are local communities receiving Chinese presence? And looking ahead, how durable and impactful are these ties? To explore these questions, I'm joined by Dr. Shaojin Chai, whose research focuses on the cultural and discursive strategies that link Chinese foreign policy to the Middle East. Shaojin previously served as Assistant Professor of International Relations at the University of Sharjah in the UAE. Today, he is Senior Researcher in Education Without Borders. Shaojin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Much has been written about the Chinese government's emphasis on people-to-people exchange in foreign relations, but I'd like to talk to you about informal people-to-people ties that develop ground up. What do you think are the most significant types of people-to-people ties shaping perceptions of China in the Middle East? And how do these relationships contribute to China's presence and narrative in the region?
Thank you for your questions. In addition to the government-to-government cooperation and exchanges, people-to-people exchange and communication between China and MENA societies are also important. We can see there's a few areas. First of all, education, mostly between universities, between scholars, especially in terms of Arabic teaching, Islamic studies, Middle Eastern studies. In this area, there are a lot of exchanges. On the other side, we have recently many Arab states, including United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, has started to put Mandarin, Chinese language curriculum into their national schools. So, in addition to the Confucius Institute, which used to teach Chinese language to university students, but now this goes further down to primary schools and high schools. And in fact, although these are like a government-funded, sponsored program, but many of these teachers are recruited across all sectors of society, from China and also from Chinese community in those countries. That's education. And then we have culture exchanges, and then we have youth exchanges and technology, which often connect with business, corporations. And lastly, I want to see is Chinese community who build their lives inside these MENA countries. So they came to the UAE either for business, for now it's not only for business, I should say. They bought the houses, they bought the land, they build a life here. So these people also play a role as a bridging role between China and MENA countries. These all informal networks and exchanges help to present more like organic and holistic image of China. And I would say it's helped boost China's soft power, good perception of China in the region through this non-official or semi-state, semi-people approach.
So people-to-people ties are especially visible in the Arab Gulf, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and also in Egypt, primarily because of historically strong education linkages, also labor market linkages with China. To what extent today are unofficial business networks, entrepreneurs, professionals, migrant workers, etc., to what extent are these business networks feeding into people to people exchange, particularly after the launch of the Belt and Road Initiative in 2013 and the strengthening of economic relations with China? How do these networks and business activities shape China's broader image in the region?
Yeah, these businesses, first you have, I mean, some are like state to state big project, construction or infrastructure project, but the people they hire and people they move to in the region for those projects, the way they interact with local society, local population is not necessarily endorsed or sponsored or instructed by the state. They just it's just human beings, living in a new society. They interact, but this, in fact, had a positive impact. First of all, I mean, China brought Chinese workers, engineers, and technicians brought a lot of new experience, new skills, new innovation ways to do infrastructure, to build products. And that's, I would say, like China manufacturing, China made in China diffusion. So these techniques and experience and models now being adopted across the sectors of the society by businesses, local factory, in particular, because now many of these Middle Eastern countries, they encourage Chinese companies to relocate their factories, or build the satellite or branch factories here in their country. So actually, this technology, or how to say, construction and diffusion, increased image or increased the credibility of China industrial power. Let's see, because China is not simply being say, oh, you just only manufacture this goods, that's good, but China can also export, industrial capacity, industrial models, and innovation technologies. So that's one part. Secondly, with this increasing traders, businessmen come to the Middle East and they interact with local population and local business. So you will see many business associations, chambers, clubs were established or have been establishing between Chinese and Arab merchants and Arab businessmen. For example, Dubai Chamber of Commerce or Industry in UAE, they recorded more than 500 Chinese companies being their members, in the last 2025. So it was big increase. You see so many people are joining the local and I mean the host country's chamber, and they be part of it. And this must create business networks. Of course, we know in China, every year they have many big expos, exhibitions, trade fairs. They attract many Chinese to Guangzhou, to Yiwu, to Shanghai, Beijing. And actually, each province has some kind of a sister city relations with certain cities in the Middle East to boast this kind of business networks and ties. And some are they're very sector or geographic specific. For example, in the UAE, you have 7 emirates. Each emirate is matchmaking with one big city in China. Abu Dhabi with Beijing, Dubai with Shenzhen, Ajman with Chongqing. So all this they are matching. These are like official initiative, of course, but under this, there are a lot of discussions about business corporations, industry cooperation, etc. And in terms of labor, in fact, it will be interesting to observe. I know in some countries like Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, probably maybe Saudi Arabia, the Chinese product they are labor intensive. So you've heard that even in they become popular literature or entertainment, that stories between Chinese who worked in these countries as a laborer, as a trader, and how the relations they built. Yeah. And in the GCC countries, especially in the UAE, and it's recently we've observed one phenomenon like China had more like management and engineers and technicians. They said less laborers, or like construction laborers, workers, because I think it's just purely like business calculation. They can hire other nationalities in the region with less cost, and so I think because also you observed the labor cost in China is rising last 10 years or if not more. So, but I can feel that that this labor force joining the Middle East could contribute another uh, boost for China's image and soft power. One like kind of sayings going on among the Chinese entrepreneurs. They always sort of if they can afford it, always think and the Chinese workers are much more efficient and fast, and they can help these countries build their infrastructures much much efficient. Then we have so what else? The business. There's this new what we call economic networking through mechanism. For example, the chambers and semi-government officials will take initiative, and the business association will implement. They build the cross-border or cross-region centers or mechanism to facilitate the mutual exchange and cooperation between MENA countries and China. So I think these are all initiatives from people, from business side in particular. Oh, by the way, I also have to mention the Chinese entrepreneurs. As far as I know, they are learned how to engage with local population through corporate social responsibilities. And many Chinese companies, private or like state-owned companies, they launch charity campaigns. They do Ramadan donations, food distributions in the host country, and build dig the well, build hospitals, schools to help to build trust from the local population. Yeah, we see that happening in Iraq, in Algeria, at least in Jordan. This, of course, because of the current situation in Palestine and Gaza is so intense. Many companies would like to help, but unfortunately, because it's really blocked everything, it's very difficult for them. Sometimes, if they were successful in doing that, they can only do it through Egypt or Jordan to some extent.
I want to go back to the point that economic integration and tech diffusion create the space for people-to-people relations, bringing local populations into contact with Chinese individuals and communities and creating new types of connections. And these connections might differ across countries based on prevalent sectors within these countries. I'd like to ask, how do local communities engage with Chinese communities and cultures? Do they engage with Chinese communities and cultures differently depending on the location? How are these flows of Chinese nationals being received, for example, in Gulf states versus North Africa versus the Levant, etc.? Is there a difference?
I think there are some variations. So in Gulf Street, I observed mostly, you have this what called local technology transfer or know-how transfer happening high tech. For example, in the UAE, Huawei played a very important role in establishing innovation centers in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and they recruit local talent. And in fact, every year they host many competitions, tech competitions or ICT competitions, which they get the brilliant students from local population, then give them grant and send them to China for a short period of time to show them the most advanced technologies and innovations in Huawei or other. I think other companies are doing that too, but Huawei I think is the most promised one. And also one another example was also in the UAE, the China high-speed train was part of the Etihad Rail, where UAE is building across the country railway system, and all the cars, trains were procured from China. Not only China just provide this, cars and train equipment and trucks, but they also have to, to train the local talent which can operate the train, and to maintain the train for maintenance, for repair. So I think through this, there's a lot of this help to local population to see the Chinese technology and the Chinese know-how. In Saudi Arabia, we heard Alibaba and Ali Cloud is doing the similar things. Because in Saudi you have this what is called Saudization. As a high-tech company, you have to hire certain quota of the local population, and this policy actually, in fact, helped the Saudi Arabia population knows more about Chinese technology. In Levant, actually, I didn't study that much, but I mostly noticed that humanitarian aid through Jordan, through Syria, Palestine, were one way of both for private sector and state, Chinese state and Chinese private business to engage with locally. And there's some, actually, their localization percentage, I assume, wouldn't be as big as in UAE or Saudi Arabia, because I think that the investment or the presence of the big Chinese big company are not as prominent as the country I just mentioned. I think in Morocco, Egypt, North Africa, it's I mentioned before, it's very labor intensive. In Morocco, they have a lot of solar products actually. In our Algeria, many oil and gas and infrastructure products. Traditionally, I see there's because if China is doing a product, they have their own kind of camps or stations. So they were kind of a bit isolated or separated from local population. They would engage, but engage more in at one way of a social corporate social responsibilities, and the others are like just business way, very let's say even a bit transactional situation. I don't know if it's improved or not. One thing I noticed is like through recent Belt and Road Initiative and through social media and through this deepening ties between the two sides, more and more popular people to exchange happening in those between the Chinese who are doing product here and the local population, because this actually before the because of language barrier, because of location isolation, etc., they couldn't engage. But now, if you are in Egypt or Morocco or somewhere, like at least you go on TikTok or you go on some kind of this social media thing, enter into this space, which you might see out. There's the China interest from the local population, and or maybe the local population will see, what those Chinese companies are doing. So this media actually help each other to know more.
So, digital expansion, I imagine, is a very important channel for integration, for normalizing Chinese cultural presence in the locations where Chinese investments exist, but also beyond. I want to move to a discussion of people to people relations and how they tie into state to state engagements. People to people relations aren't new. These exchanges have been a tool of Chinese foreign policy since the early days of the Republic under Mao. After reform and opening up, these ties helped to build support for China's international relations. More recently, we've heard President Xi Jinping emphasize them again, telling Arab Gulf leaders in 2018, for example, that through tourism, education, and media cooperation, we will deepen mutual understanding and friendship between our peoples. So, what sectors of people to people exchange is the Chinese state most active in today? And what kind of state led objectives or narratives do you see being promoted through these sectors?
I mentioned one sector is education. So there's many scholarship China governments established to support Arab students to study in China. Then I've talked about language programs, Confucius Institute, and the national curriculum of certain Arab countries, which teach Mandarin. And besides education and language, we have media. In fact, all the major state media have presence now in Arab countries, MENA countries, like CCTV Arabic. And now it's called CGTV Arabic. And you have China Radio International, People's Daily overseas. And of course, they serve the Chinese community in the region, but still, sometimes they report about the Middle East. And then Xinhua News Agency. And these are like state media. But also we have a private media. Private media, you have I think it's China Arab TV. It's a private TV based in Dubai. More importantly, new media. You know, TikTok, Red Book, what is called Red Notice, Red Notebook. I mean, these are like a new popular, youth focused media, which actually help both China and Chinese government and Chinese people to know and to be known by people in MENA. And then we have culture aspect. Besides what you just mentioned, digital technology, digital platforms help Chinese image, Chinese culture to be diffused, expanded, to be known in the region. But China actually established some culture centers in the region. Although these China culture centers are like established and sponsored by the Chinese government, like Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Culture and Tourism, it's called now its new name. But the way they engage is like very people to people, because you have to get people to interest in your shows, in your culture. You have to invite people to your activities, to your events. So they can only do through people to people ties, networks, through universities, through museums, through art foundations, associations in the region. I mean, for example, in Abu Dhabi last year, China was the guest the owner of Abu Dhabi Festival, which is sponsored by Abu Dhabi Music and Art Foundation. It's an NGO private, so they invite China, and I think China sent the top level performers. I think it's first time for many people here. They see the cultural repertoire of China. The very diverse. One way actually, because these are some are the government selected or sponsored to perform and shows. They represent more like historical, civilizational, even kind of traditional way of knowing Chinese culture or Chinese art compared to the popular culture. Of course, we know Korean culture, Japanese, Western, Hollywood, this kind of culture, also popular in the region. But China presents another type. We are more like, say, I don't want to say conservative or traditional, but just another alternative. Unlike the popular ones, and the Chinese culture present another more grand or more like collective show kind of type of thing. So it is something interesting to look at.
You mentioned government selected ways of knowing China, Chinese culture, Chinese art, Chinese society. Is there ever a tension that emerges between the Chinese government's approach of fomenting and cultivating people to people relations and the more organic, everyday people to people relationships that develop on the ground?
There's no tension, but as I said, it's just that maybe you are targeting different audience or serving different purposes. Of course, the so-called organic or private initiated shows will attract some local population. For example, I think Saudi Arabia invited. This is again, I think maybe not good example. The famous Chinese pianist Lang Lang have been invited by UAE, Saudi Arabia, I think many I think states to perform. But can you see? Is it like it was look like it's a universal one? It doesn't really represent government or private. So it was liked by both sides. But some of the government selected more want to like show the history and the civilization of China. Although they're fabulous, but it's more to present China's rich culture, unlike the popular or the universal ones. Still, we have some like a common areas which I think can present Chinese culture in a more like audience friendly way. Like you don't want like pin the show which the audience doesn't want to really look, doesn't want like a watch or like a one thing I think is like the new maybe it's not the shows of the games. Let's see, many games actually now popular among the Arab youth. Actually, they're developed or converted by the popular games from China, and like this big company like Tencent and Mihail, I don't see in English, I forgot. But their games are all popular. They have been so much localized. You cannot tell, you know, they are the Chinese made. There's no trace of a Chinese culture or Chinese way. It's very like a universal, or let's universal, like a popular culture oriented. I think this you just target different audience and you have different functions when China is presenting itself.
I want to go back to a topic we discussed earlier, which is the link between economic ties and people to people ties. It seems that people to people ties grow densest in areas where trade and investment have really taken off. The UAE, for example, in the last decade, the value of non oil trade has almost quadrupled between China and the UAE, reaching 102 billion in 2024, I believe. And alongside that, growing financial cooperation, growing joint investment, infrastructure cooperation, etc. And at the same time, the UAE is a country where Chinese tourism has grown at the fastest rate than any other location in the region. Tourism has quadrupled in the same period in the past decade, reaching 1 million Chinese visitors a year. And the Chinese expat community in the UAE has also grown exponentially within this period. So it seems that there's a clear link between economic ties and people to people ties, social ties, cultural ties. Do you think that there's a push to expand people to people ties mainly following an economic agenda? And what are the implications of the buildup of people to people ties and by virtue of that Chinese soft power in these particular countries in the region?
Yeah, we can see the correlation, this pattern that where trade and economic active were more active and there's more tourists or more people to people exchange happening. I doubt there will be like a really rigid, concerted order or action from the state. Like you have to go to this country. I think it's just like come naturally or whenever because Chinese there's this like they have their own social networks and trust networks. If China they are doing well in like for example in the UAE and they spread the word, let's see what we got product here, we made money here, and we build business here, and the others will see yeah they will come they will come. Of course, we have to see the UAE knows how to brand and present itself including in China. They hired Chinese to do social media and to brand themselves, and invited the Chinese superstar to present Abu Dhabi, to present Dubai to the Chinese tourists. They're very successful. Anyway, these two phenomena could be the caused by the reason in China, which is that now China's foreign trade or expansion of the market and relocate the factory manufacture capacity are more looking at the Middle East and North Africa because of geopolitical reasons and because of domestic market reasons. So geopolitically, we know because of China-U.S. rivalry. So the China used to like do more toward American, toward Europe, and to South Korea, Japan, Australia. These are kind of so-called the West, right? Now they have very tense relations since 2018 because of trade wars, because of the rivalries, because of conflict, tensions, and disagreement over Russia in Ukraine, etc., etc. And the recent escalation is that Trump even announced that he's going to tariff those China's neighboring countries, especially Southeast Asia countries, which are, serve as he said, re-exporting or serve as the alternative um, manufacturer for Chinese industrial capacity. So because of this, I think China feel pressured to move Chinese factories and Chinese state and Chinese people. They also Middle East is like a new blue sea, a new area for us to explore, to tap, to shift to. Now, I received so many of trade delegates, university trips, and culture groups. Like if you come here like more than 15 years ago, 15 years ago, you never thought this group will come to the UAE or come to the Middle East because they will probably go to America, Japan, or at least go to Singapore. They will not take I mean, I don't want to say they ignore this area, but they just thought, this area is mysterious. It's something for China is not that, priority. But now it is a priority. Maybe it's their priority. They have to come out. They have to engage the population. And UAE serve as a good place because it's openness, because of its good infrastructure, and it's very friendly and to all nationalities, including the Chinese. I think Saudi Arabia will be the next, because now Saudi has opened up and there's more new opportunities. I hope other Middle Eastern countries will be also become the new destination for Chinese, either in terms of business, in terms of tourists, and even for people-to-people exchange. So I think this is the new shift. It's happening from within China. It's not just simply China was pulled or pushed by the U.S. or by the West, because domestically speaking, China's market, inside China, they're very competitive, and they have to expand to overseas. Belt and Road Initiative is like one to the state-led initiative, but there's many private initiatives. They see Middle East as a potential market or potential new destination. But I would say after I met so many of these, I felt there are a big knowledge gap, and they don't understand the Middle East, not only in terms of culture, religion, society, people, but in terms of business itself. It's also the way people are doing business here is so different than in China, than in Southeast Asia, where there's a like sizable Chinese population for more than 100 years, and of course different from the West. So they have the learning curve to learn, but they'll get there hopefully.
Hopefully. Shaojin, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your insights on the role of people-to-people ties in shaping China's relationship across the Middle East.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a fascinating conversation that really highlights the importance of everyday exchanges alongside state-to-state diplomacy. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Be sure to join us next time.